you everyone for your patience. All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining JINSA for our regular update on the war in Gaza and indeed on all of the 7 fronts that Israel is fighting. I'm Blaise Misztal, JINSA's Vice President for Policy, and I'm delighted and honored as always to be joined by JINSA Distinguished Fellow and former Israeli National Security Advisor, Major General Yaacov Amidror, and JINSA's Jenny and Julian Josephson, Senior Vice President for Israeli Affairs and former Head of Operations for the Israeli General Staff, Major General Yaacov Ayish. Generals, thank you both for being with us. And as always, I'll have some questions for the generals and then turn it over for questions for the audience. So if you have questions at any point, please feel free to submit them using the Q&A feature in Zoom. And then I'll read them out at the end of the session for the generals to answer. I wanted to start, Generals Amidror and Ayish, with the announcement today from the 162nd Division that they have dismantled the Rafah Brigade of Hamas. In fact, that they announced that they've eliminated over 2,000 terrorists and destroyed approximately 13 kilometers of tunnels under Rafah. Does this mark the end of the Rafah operation, and does this mark the end of major combat operations in Gaza? What is the significance of this announcement today, General Amidror?
I think that to understand it, we have to mention a letter which was found under Khan Yunis and was captured by our forces and was translated and published by the Minister of Defense. It's a letter from a few months ago from the commander of the Khan Yunis brigade to Sinwar, in which he is telling his commander kind of a report about the situation. They lost 50% of their people, and they have now only 25%. Another 25 probably went away, running outside the area. They lost 60% of their weapon and almost 100% of their ability to launch rockets into Israel and to produce new ones. And he's complaining that they are losing the support of their people. And if you combine it with the declaration about the Rafah operation, you understand that unlike what was published in some media places in the United States of America and in Israel as well, the IDF is dismantling slowly but surely the abilities of Hamas. And Hamas is still there, are still members. They can kill Israelis from time to time. They can launch once in 2 weeks rockets to somewhere in the area around the Gaza Strip, most of them, by the way, to empty places, not even intercepted by the Iron Dome. And yes, Rafah was the last strong area in which there are forces. Still, we have probably 1 battalion in Bir el-Balah and 1 west of Bir el-Balah. This is the remains of the organized forces of Hamas, and there are around Sinwar few Hamas members with very limited capabilities. The only asset that they have is not their military capability, but the fact that they are holding their hostages. So the answer to your question is yes, but not completely. And it will take probably another month to dismantle the other elements, and then slowly to erode the capabilities to the level in which it is not just irrelevant, but we have a full military operational control on the ground and under the ground. And the underground tunnels are still a challenge. Not all of them have been destroyed. We probably don't have enough TNT in Israel to destroy all of them. But we are taking the important part of the system, and we are, like water going outside the center in the most important areas to less important areas to destroy those tunnels as well. But it will take time. If you ask me to probably within a month or two, you will see reduce of the forces inside Gaza. We will finish the perimeter around the borders of Gaza, and it's really kind of a no man's land. And I believe that within a month, you will see less forces, which will be less needed inside Gaza. And we will try to keep as long as possible the Philadelphia corridor and the Netzarim corridor, separating the north from the south, and to continue the erosion of the Hamas capabilities. There are some pieces of intelligence that they are recruiting new members to the Hamas. They don't have any training, they don't have any organization to help them, intelligence and so on and so forth. And you remember that we went with 2 brigades into Khan Yunis to find the captures hostages. We went in and out without any big fight in the area. They lost the ability to concentrate their forces against our efforts. They don't have the intelligence to support them. They don't have the ability to produce new rockets and missiles inside. And because we are sitting along the corridor of Philadelphia, they don't have the ability to smuggle in new capabilities or weapon systems, including rockets. So slowly it is going to be done, the main effort, and we will have to continue to clean the area from all the remnants. It will take probably another year. But we will be in a situation within a month towards the end of October, in which we can take forces out. We can keep the area calm without too many brigades inside, securing the envelope around the Gaza Strip, and continuing the, as I called it, the erosion, the cleaning of the area with less forces based on very specific intelligence that we will have to collect on the ground. So this is the situation in the south. Towards the end, it's if I can call it according to Churchill books, it's the end of the beginning.
General Ayish, maybe I could ask you to give us a little more detail on the operational achievement of the 162nd Division. What did they face in Rafah, and what did they have to do to get to this point where they can say that they dismantled the Rafah Brigade?
It's very tempting to go immediately to the operational details and to describe the sea trap that General Amidror just mentioned from Khan Yunis, but let me remind our audience that the strategic goal of the IDF, as it was given by the Israeli government, was not only to dismantle Hamas, but also to create conditions and bring back the hostages. So we cannot speak this evening yet about mission accomplished. We are far from that part. However, in terms of dismantling Hamas, the progress that the IDF had made in Rafah is significant. But I think it's really important to mention our participants that 3.5 months ago, there was a huge debate between Israel and especially the US about the need to go into Rafah and to deal with the Rafah brigade, and how long it's going to take the IDF to evacuate the population. We are talking about around 1 million Palestinians from the Rafah area into the humanitarian zones. Let me remind you that the IDF have created corridors for those Palestinians and paved the roads for them, which led for an evacuation of that area. Having said that, the Rafah Brigade and Hamas had around 8 months to prepare himself for the entrance of the IDF to the Rafah area. And for that, what they did, they simply deployed hundreds of IEDs all over. What they were doing, they were taking cars and they were using the cameras that cars are using at the back to give them a kind of detection about the IDF. They deployed a huge amount of explosive inside the houses. So practically speaking, Rafah and the refugee camps around it were full with the explosives. And that was the challenge for the IDF, to include 200 subterranean systems, i.e. tunnels, that this division had to deal with. And in terms of operations, what was achieved is 2,300 Hamas terrorists that were killed. Around 700, 800 fled from that area of Rafah and Tel Sultan into the humanitarian zone, and the rest were killed or injured, as I have described. So in terms of the military infrastructure, in terms of the military capabilities of the Rafah Brigade plus its battalions, the mission was accomplished. There are still few tunnels that are waiting for order. They are still under kind of an investigation. Once the order will be given, they will explode them as they did with the others. I'm telling to Amidror that explosive is not the challenge here, because what the IDF is using is something else, and we have more than enough from it. If you want, maybe later on I can describe it. It's kind of an emulsia that the IDF is using, very secure, because when you are taking 2,000 tons of explosives into this area, it could be very risky. But this is something that we developed years ago, and they are using it inside the tunnels. We should mention the fact that the division that is fighting in the area of Rafah is fighting since the beginning of the war without having any break, any recess. It's the same HQ, it's the same division commander, same units. And I must admit, it's pretty impressive how they do it. Just to give you the sense, we are talking about 740 soldiers that they were injured. 500 of them are back into Rafah fighting at the moment. Some of them were injured twice. Some of them were injured 3 times. The reason why I'm describing it, it's amazing to see the motivation of those units and the level of tactical leadership that lead them in battle. When you are talking about the Nahal Brigade, about the 401 Armored Brigade, when you are thinking about the Flotilla 13 fighting with them under the ground, when you are thinking about Givati and many others, it's pretty amazing, and it's really important to mention it right now because we are already 11 months into the war, and the performance and the motivation that they are showing is pretty amazing.
On the topic of tunnels, I wanted to ask about a report that I saw today with the IDF saying that the tunnels under the Philadelphia corridor into Egypt weren't being used just for smuggling weapons, or perhaps even primarily for smuggling weapons, but were also being used for firing rockets, storing rockets, and as a place from which to attack Israel. Can you tell us any more about that?
Yeah, we spoke about it a few weeks ago. Let me mention our audience about this. The idea of using Philadelphia is based on the understanding about the notion that they have a secure flank by the Egyptians, which is very sensitive for the Israeli forces on a daily basis to go and deal with. That's was the idea that led them to deploy and create launching pads along the Philadelphia axis. They did it before the war. And the idea was to launch from there. And they knew that for us to attack these launching pads or to retaliate towards that area in wartime will be very complicated because we might hit, an Egyptian territory. And it's quite clear that you have Egyptians deployed in towers very close to those areas. So that's what they did. They simply dug those launchers literally on the Philadelphia, near the fence, near the border. And it was fully prepared with the wires going into tunnels, some of them into the houses, from where they can simply either ignite or push the button and launch the rockets. That was the idea. Based on that, they deployed quite a lot, and that's exactly what this division have found when they stormed the Philadelphia area. So they found it above ground, and later on they found, I've already mentioned the number of 200 tunnels. I call it systems. It's not only tunnels, and it was used for different purposes. Some of them are used for smuggling of weapons. Some of them were used for goods, smuggling of goods, simply using the fact that some of the goods are subsidized on the Egyptian area. And once you are transferring it into the Palestinian area, you can earn some money for it. And some of them were used for machinery that they brought in to the Gaza Strip. Some of that was used for human trafficking, also into the Gaza Strip. Some of them were only HQs and depots, and some of them were to be used as shelters, as it was published by the IDF. So these are the different tunnels. However, the IDF published it today, so we can speak about it. When you are talking in terms of armament, to exclude the years of Morsi of 2013 and 14, most of the armament that came into Rafah was smuggled above ground via the Rafah passage, simply by bribing the right people, as we are familiar with that technique as well.
Shifting from the south of Gaza to the north, there have been reports this week about new evacuation orders pertaining as well to some of the humanitarian areas in the north. Can you tell us a little more about what's going on in the north of the Gaza?
I think you are referring to an idea that was proposed by General Aylan and some other generals. So nothing was implemented yet, but General Aylan came with the idea of simply moving the population from the northern part of the Gaza Strip into the humanitarian zone. You are talking about 300,000 Palestinians that are still there in that area, and giving them around a week to move from there via 2 corridors into the humanitarian zone. And afterwards, whoever left behind or is still in that area will be suspected as a terrorist. And from that, you can understand that he might be a target. At the same time, a humanitarian supply is not going to be delivered to that area. It's going to be blocked fully from all directions for a humanitarian supply. And by that, it will create pressure on the terrorists. We are estimating a few thousands that are still hiding behind the population over there. And they won't have access to humanitarian support, something that might also create pressure on Hamas leadership to move to the hostages deal.
General Amidror, if I could return to something that you said earlier, saying that maybe in a month or two, the IDF will be able to reduce its forces and reduce some of the operations. I remember being in Israel in February with our Gaza assessment team, and when we were there, we heard maybe a month or two, and we'll reduce operations. I remember being in Israel in June with our Generals and Admirals program, and we heard maybe a month or two, and we'll reduce operations. Are we actually any closer to that month or two timeline for reducing operations?
First of all, by definition, we are closer. I don't know when it will happen, but it's closer. But I think that the answer is that we didn't enter to Rafah more than 2 months. And if you take this time out of the schedule, you see that we are not far from what was said a few months ago. And yes, both in Khan Yunis and in Rafah, the operation was longer than what we prepared because we found new materials, new tunnels, new intelligence during the operation, and the decision was we are not stopping because someone make a plan for a month. If we have enough targets and we have enough capabilities to destroy, and we find the infrastructure, we should continue. And here it is a good example when the flexibility of the forces to keep the momentum on and not to stop in the day which was dated by someone when he didn't have the full picture because we didn't know many facts about the underground system. The answer is that's what should be done to keep the momentum in spite the fact that at the beginning we thought that it would be a shorter operation. That happened in Khan Yunis and in Rafah. And in Rafah, I think some surprises under the Philadelphia corridor also contribute to the decision to make all the efforts to continue and to finish the job before we are declaring that it was finished. But after the dismantling of the Rafah brigade and Khan Yunis brigade, the number of battalions that's still functioning in the Deir el-Balach and west of Deir el-Balach are very few. It's probably two battalions without the brigade frame. The reason that we are fighting very slowly is because of 2 reasons. One, the hostages. We are very careful. We are moving away from the areas in which we think or have intelligence that they keep the hostages. And now even more so after the assassinate the 6 hostages, only because they saw the IDF closing towards the place in which they had been secured by Hamas under the ground. And the other reason is the need to fight within the tunnels system. It's very, very slow process and should be coordinated with the fight on the ground. And this is 2 lessons that we learned through this war, that to fight in urban area in which there are hostages, it's very complicated. And to fight parallelly under the ground and on the ground is also making the decision-making and the process itself, the combat process, much more complicated. And this is why it is still there. And by the way, we are not running anywhere. It's not Afghanistan that we have to move forces, I don't know how many thousand miles. It's 10 kilometers from the border. So if there is a need to stay another month, we will stay another month. Logistically, it's not something which will change the whole structure of the division. What important is what was mentioned by General Ayish is the stamina and the readiness and the determination of the commanders and the soldiers on the ground, fighting for a very, very long time, and they don't stop, because if there are targets and there are chances to release the hostages and there is infrastructure we should get and destroy, they are ready to stay. By the way, a few months ago, 70 battalions commander from the reserve forces sent a letter to the chief of staff saying, we are ready to stay, or if there is a need, to come again and again till the destruction of Hamas. And this is what is motivating those commanders on the ground and the soldiers. The feeling that in this war, Israel should not compromise before the destruction of Hamas.
If I could shift from Gaza to the West Bank, where we've seen IDF operations over the last 2 weeks, are those operations winding down? Are they continuing? And what is the status of the threat in the West Bank today?
I think that in a way, we understand now better the threat from the West Bank, and the dreams of West Bank, Hamas and Islamic Jihad organizations to copy the 7th of October some way. They don't have these capabilities, they don't have these numbers, they don't have the amount of Toyotas and so on and so forth. But what they try to imitate is the moving the terror actions into the civilian communities of Jewish settlers or into Israel. And we captured some booby-trapped cars, and we know about some operations that had been thwarted by the intelligence and the IDF in the middle of the process of implementing it. And this is why we are more aggressive in our operations, mainly in Jenin, but not only in Jenin. Around Hebron, there is another effort, but mainly around Jenin. And you could see there are hundreds of armed Palestinians that, if they have the ability, they will make some kind of 7th of October kind of an operation in the West Bank, and that should be prevented in advance. And that's what we are trying to do, and it probably will continue.
Is there?
I would
go ahead.
Just add one word about Judea and Samaria. I think it's really important, because what we see here is new principles that are implemented at the Central Command and that division. Based on what they have identified, the motivation to launch suicide bombers and so on and so forth is totally there. So it seems like they decided to analyze what they see based on capabilities and not on intentions. And for that reason, they are going into the relevant centers where either they have infrastructure, labs, explosives, equipment, and terrorists hiding, and they are trying to uproot them from there, arrest them, or to kill them. And they are using a new set of tools that in the past they were not using. And that's why you have today, from the beginning of the war, hundreds of terrorists that were killed in Judea and Samaria, more than 500, by the way.
If I can give some words about looking at it from the strategic point of view, the biggest failure of Sinwar in the 7th of October was the fact that the day after, he didn't succeed to ignite the West Bank. It was crucial from his point of view, more important, by the way, than Hezbollah, because that would give Sinwar and Hamas the ability to claim that they are acting on behalf of the Palestinian people. And look what happened in Gaza and in the West Bank. It didn't happen. And since then, and even before the 7th of October, Iran is pouring money into the area. They're trying to smuggle in weapons both from Lebanon and directly from Jordan. And they have some success operation in which they succeeded to bring in a light weapon into the West Bank. You cannot do it with rockets and so on and so forth, but with light weapon into the West Bank. And we can see the efforts of Iran, because they understand what was understood by Sinwar, that this is the soft belly of Israel. If that will be ignited, the whole situation will be different, internationally and domestically. And this is why it is so important for them to succeed, and this is why we are determined in those operations to uproot those capabilities when they are still young and low. But yes, we have a great challenge, big challenge there, and we will continue to act in the West Bank.
You also mentioned Jordan, General Amidror, and I wonder if you can give us any more information on the attack at the Allenby Bridge.
I think that
this weekend.
the attack in Allenby Bridge was not significant from the point of view that it is not symbolizing the relation between us and Jordan. It is failure of the intelligence, very good intelligence, by the way. The domestic intelligence of the Jordanian is a superb organization. One of the few succeeded to infiltrate to ISIS in the old good days of ISIS. They're really professionals. But it's not guarantee of 100%. This is an example of a failure of the intelligence. We are cooperating on the low and the high level, both intelligence and military. And it is our interest, in the interest of the region, by the way, interest of the United States, that the kings will succeed to contain the wave. And under the pressure of the Iranians who understand, as I said, the east side is the soft belly of Israel. It's the longest border of Israel with an Arab state. This Arab state is not a rich state. It's a very poor state, with many problems inside between Jordanians and Jordanians Palestinians, and so on and so forth. And this is a challenge for the king, in which we can help professionally, but he needs economic support, and what he is getting is not enough, according to my understanding. But I think that it is one case of failure and not something which it's not the average situation in Jordan. The intelligence is very good. They didn't succeed to stop all the smuggles into Israel from Jordan, because for some people, it's not about security, it's about economy. They are earning a lot of money. And in a poor country like Jordan, it's a big motivation. And I hope that together we will find a way how to continue the cooperation. We are now examining the ability and the need to put a long fence in the east side, along the Jordan River. It is not an easy project, not at all, very costly. and symbolizing something that we don't want to symbolize. The situation is deteriorating, and we don't want to give them the ability, the satisfaction and the ability to claim that is situation. But if that continue, we will not have any other choice but to put a fence along the almost 500 kilometers of the border.
Maybe looking at the northern arena, General Ayish, if you could give us a situation report. There's been reports of Israeli action in Syria. There have been more continued attacks from Lebanon, including a drone that hit a building in Nahariya. Is this just more of the same of what we've been seeing for the last 11 months? Have there been any changes in the north? You're on mute, General.
The attrition warfare between Israel and Hezbollah continue, and if we will take just the last 2 days, we are talking about more than 150 rockets that were launched. I'm proud to say that my niece identified yesterday a terrorist that later on was killed by a drone. So you can understand from that we are still very active, very successful at the operational level. Having said that, it's not enough to do two things. It's not enough to prevent Hezbollah from launching, and it's not enough to allow the residents of the north to be back to their villages. It seems to me like the window for the diplomatic effort is still open. I'm not sure until when. However, I told you, and I said it a few times over here, I'm afraid that the war with Hezbollah, it's a matter of time. This threat will have to be removed, and this is the only way that I can see that security will be restored in the north.
You asked about the operation in Syria, if I can give some background. I don't have a clue about the operation itself, but I can tell you that the area in which it was done, the place in which it was done, is the center of the most important R&D and production system of the Syrians. It's what we call cells. And this is the center of the R&D part of cells. They are producing for the Syrian army and for Hezbollah very sophisticated weapon systems with a lot of help from Iran, know-how, materials, and so on and so forth. And in a way, this is the next generation of capabilities that they are building there. So I don't know what they succeeded to destroy. There are many stories about commando raid parallel to the Air Force strike. I don't know what is true and what is fake. But the place which was destroyed, and there were 3 waves of strikes by the Air Force, it means that someone decided to make it very, deep in this case, to come again and again and to be sure that everything was destroyed, is a very important stage in the chain of supporting Hezbollah by the Iranians and Syria. So if there is a very successful operation there for the long range, it's a very bad news for Hezbollah.
Let me ask you one question to try to get a little more specifics, if you're able to, General Amidror, and then I'll open it up to the audience. So if you do have any questions, please feel free to submit them using the Q&A feature. General Amidror, you said that this area in Syria was producing next generation capabilities for Iran, for Hezbollah. are these capabilities that Iran has designed and provided the designs to Syria to produce in the same way that it has sent its designs for its drones to Russia, and Russia is manufacturing Iranian drones? Or is this R&D for new capabilities above and beyond what Iran already has? Do we know?
It's a good question. The place itself is center of R&D, by the way, for chemical weapon as well. They were that was the place in which they produce the new chemical materials in the past. It's both, by the way. It's both. It's designs which had been designed by the Iranians, and they send the blueprints to the Syrians to produce, and it's easier to move it from Syria than from Iran. But more important, from my point of view, is this is a center of R&D. Joined Syrian and Iranians experts try to build the next generation. So you can find both in cells in this organization. I don't know what was the specific target in this case, so I cannot say anything specifically about that. But the organization is doing both. Old or good designs which had been produced by the Iranians, and they are producing the weapon systems at the end, and the same organization is responsible for the joint venture between the Iranians and the Syrians relating to new capabilities in the future.
Sounds like a dangerous place.
Not anymore, I hope.
Let me turn to questions from the audience. We have one, but if there's any others, please feel free to submit them. Stanley Spatz asks, how reliable is U.S. support, real support, not lip service, for Israel? What are Israel's options if U.S. support proves to be less than ironclad?
I think that the Israeli attaché in Washington should answer the question.
It's all about expectations. Israel is here. Israel, the IDF forces are here to defend themselves, but they by themselves. So it's only a matter of expectations. So far, when it comes to defense, mainly air and missile defense, it was proved, and I think we don't have to elaborate on it. And about the rest, it's a matter of expectations. We don't expect the US to fight for us. Period. That's it. So I think from the question, it might be understood that someone who is expecting the US to come and fight for us. It's not the case.
At all. Not at all. It's not the case.
Well, let me follow that up by asking, is there any significance or major impact to the IDF's readiness of the announcement from the UK this week that they were going to suspend some weapon sales to Israel?
It has its own implications, not necessarily in the short term, but we understand that it's not only the UK. Once the UK signal something like that, it might impact some others. It's not a major systems. We are talking here about components, but the strategic signal is the wrong one. Think about what have happened in October 7th and 11 months after that. Israel is under a ban from the UK. It's crazy. It's ridiculous.
All right.
I'm thinking about. I must mention, when I'm thinking about the hostages that were murdered a few days ago in a tunnel, and we are discussing here, the UK with a ban on Israel on certain components, and I'm thinking about it. It's unbelievable. It's outrageous, but this is the situation.
I think those are all the questions we have from the audience this week. I don't know if any final thoughts, General Amidror, General Ayish? before we sign off?
I think that what was mentioned by General Ayish is very important. The situation in the north, as it is today, Israel cannot continue to be in this situation in the future. How long it will take us to feel that we are well prepared for initiating a war in Gaza, in Lebanon, I don't have a good answer, and here the details are more important than the idea itself. But the minute that here will be, people will feel, the decision makers feel that that they have enough capacity, enough capabilities, and they can be sure that there is a high level of probability that we will succeed to make huge damage to Hezbollah, because Hezbollah is not like Hamas. We are not going to destroy Hezbollah completely like as we did it with Hamas. But to be in a situation in which we feel that the damage will be enough to allow us to presume that we can continue then to prevent Hezbollah from regrouping and building its capabilities from the beginning. If the minute that will be in the hands of the decision makers, and it's assessment, it's not mathematics, I believe that they will not stand against the pressure to change the situation in the north completely, because otherwise, at least 80,000 Israelis will not go back to their homes.
That's a very somber note on which to end. But thank you, as always, Generals Ayish and Amidror, for all your insight and information and taking time out of your evening. Thank you to all the audience who tuned in, and look forward to seeing you next week. And I'll also tease that we'll be releasing a new paper next week that I think will be incredibly interesting from another general and distinguished fellow, this time on the American side, General Frank McKenzie. Will have a paper from him coming out next week. So keep your eyes out for that. Thank you very much, everybody, and have a good afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.